Today's video is very interesting. In fact, billions of cups are consumed every single day, and yet there is so many misconceptions around how it was found, where it was found, and we will talk about that in today's video. But before that, my name is Salim Khan. I'm an educator and author, and I want to connect our youth to their history and their legacy. My motto is to leave this world full of Muslim youth who are aware of what their ancestors achieved that made this world a better place to live in. Be inspired by them and surge great heights. If you would like to consider buying my books, the links are in the description. Let's begin. Today's topic is about coffee. Coffee is a drink that we all consume or have consumed at least once in our lives. Billion people consume it every single day, but few know how it was discovered. Many people think coffee was discovered in Yemen because Yemen became the largest market to produce coffee and export coffee, and that's where you get the Yemenese coffee from, that's where you get the Arabic coffee from, and that's where you get this special coffee called Sana'a coffee from the Sana'a port that was used to export coffee to the world. And an interesting story is coffee came to India also through Yemen, and how it was brought is another amazing story, which I'll talk about towards the end of the video. But let's talk about the main topic. How was coffee even discovered? And why did it radicalize the entire world? It so happened hundreds of years ago, there was a goat herder in Ethiopia. He would just walk his goats every single day. Every single time he would take the same path. Nothing special. He would just go around his business and come back home, do his chores, sleep, wake up. And the cycle repeated. But one day, something changed. One of the goats went astray, and he wanted to get the goat back. So he ran behind the goat. But by that time, the goat had ventured far off. Eventually, he found the goat, but also found a new path. The next day, what happened? He decided to lead the goats on that path. In between the house and the place where he would graze the goats, there was an orchard. And he noticed something incredible one day. While returning from that place, when the goats passed through the orchard, he noticed that they were energetic, they were frolicking, and they were like a completely different beast altogether. Understand one thing, this was happening while returning, meaning he was exhausted. His goats should be exhausted themselves. But the exact opposite happened. Goats were full of energy. He initially ignored it and went about his chores. The next day, the same thing happened. Again, could be coincidence, but this repeated over and over again. So one day he decided not to go through that path and follow his initial path. And he tried to observe if this phenomenon repeats. Will the goats feel the same way? To his surprise, the goats did not. The goats were not energetic. The goats were back to normal. So he concluded one thing. There has to be something that is happening between the grazing ground and his house. So this time he followed the goats carefully, and he found out it was that orchard in between that had a lot of berries where the elixir lies. He observed the goats feeding. He also held back a few goats from feeding on those red berries. And to his surprise, the goats that did not consume berries were normal, lack of energy, tired, but the goats that fed on berries were euphoric. They had so much energy. He knew now that he had hit the jackpot. He went back to his village, frolicking in happiness, brought his villagers back to that orchard. Those villagers plucked those berries and somehow managed to make a beverage out of it. That beverage is what we call coffee. The villagers consumed that beverage, and boy, they had incredible amount of energy oozing out of them. And that's how coffee was discovered. Now, from Ethiopia, coffee went to Yemen. They set up special orchards, they grew coffee, and thus began the world of coffee consumption. Coffee came to Europe through Yemen. Coffee came to India through Yemen. Now, Yemen was very, very protective of coffee. Of course, if there is any specific spice, you know what happens to that country. They get attacked, they get invaded. Look at what's happening with countries that have oil. It's just the way imperialism works. So they wanted to be very strict about who gets the coffee and who does not. So they created sort of an army to protect their asset. However, it still found a way to India. And I'll now tell you that interesting story of how it happened. So there was a man, he was a Muslim, and he was trying to get coffee beans from Yemen to India. He needed to be careful because if he were arrested, possibly the sentence was death. So he took a few beans, 5 or 6 beans of coffee, and he hid those beans inside his beard. He had a long beard and he hid those beans inside the beard somewhere. He traveled from Yemen to Malabar coast and planted those seeds in the Malabar area, which is in South India. And from there, coffee traveled to different parts of India. So every cup of coffee you have in India goes back to this one Muslim man who brought coffee to our country. The credit of every single orchard that is being built in India goes to him. And yet we have no idea that it was done by a Muslim. I will not tell you his name. I want you to go look up on Google what his name was. I want you to study the entire event of how coffee came to India. And I want you to know and understand that coffee was discovered in Ethiopia and not in Yemen. I'll leave you with a question. How did the word cappuccino come into existence? If you want me to make a video on it, let me know and I will inshallah definitely make a video on it. Write in the comments if you know the answer. If you don't, even then write in the comments that you want to know this interesting story of how cappuccino came into existence. The word was coined and how the drink itself became so famous. If you are interested in learning about these incredible facts, do consider buying my books. If you want to learn about the golden age of Islam, you can consider buying my book, Golden Age of Islam, What It Was, Why It Matters, where you learn what our achievements were about in astronomy, history, geography, mathematics, and beyond. Believe me, you'll be shocked. If you want to know about Muslim freedom fighters of India, then these are the 2 books to get. The links to these books will be in my description and also inshallah in the pinned comments. There are many other books I've written. The latest that we've launched is Tipu, Shere Mysore, addressing all the misconceptions and wrong things that have been spread about him. That's it. I'll see you in the next one. Assalamu alaikum.